And good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Perspectives. Coming up tonight on Perspectives, we celebrate Women's History Month by analyzing an important issue facing our society. As pro-life leaders in Atlanta, Georgia, launch a controversial ad campaign that highlights the overwhelming truth about the number of African-American women undergoing abortions. We consider tonight whether women are getting all the facts needed to exercise their right to choose. Our very special guest in studio will share his perspective on the matter, so we encourage you to stay here with us. We thank you for joining us and watching another episode of Perspectives. Remember, I'm Darren Jaime, and this is an interactive show, so you can call in on our conversations. 718-960-7241 is the number if you want to call in and share. Also, send us an email to perspectives@bronxnet.org, and we, of course, will open that up right here on the show. Our guest tonight is an author and prominent leader in the pro-life movement. He's the president of the Northeast chapter of the Life Education and Resource Network, also known as LEARN. He's the founder of the blackgenocide.org, a website dedicated to educating the African-American community about abortion. Reverend Clenard Childress, as we welcome him to the show. And Reverend, thank you so much for sharing with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Let's talk about this issue, because when you talk about the issue of African-American, particularly women, and abortions, numbers seem to be at a startling rate, and it's definitely caused a movement in your life.
No question. When you look at the disparity of the numbers, you thought it may be a cultural thing, so I did a little studying on that, and I found that African Americans basically abhor abortion as culturally, but once it became legal, then it was embraced. And the people who decided to make Roe versus Wade a reality first did that study in the 60s. Because the targeted community wasn't receiving abortion as they had planned. And this is all about population control. It always has been about population control. Planned Parenthood, who is the leader of the abortion industry, has 78% of their clinics in African-American neighborhoods. You always put your clinic into the culture or the target group you're trying to reach.
So 78% of Planned Parenthood clinics are actually located in African-American communities?
And that's the conservative number. I've heard as high as 85. So if you look at the evidence as far as African-Americans concerned, due to poor leadership, primarily the leadership that we look to because we see the Democratic Party as a facilitator of the civil rights movement, that movement more or less has been betrayed by the current leadership of the African-American community, perceived leadership. And so they are embracing and saying that abortion is a good thing. And abortion is one of the worst things that a woman can do. 1,786 each day, African-American children and women are victimized by the abortion industry. 1,786 lose their lives. 1,786 are traumatized. So this is not being discussed or talked about. 1/3 of African Americans are missing due to abortion. If you were to compile crimes, if you would talk about AIDS, heart disease, cancer, if you were to add all those up, it wouldn't come to half of what abortion has done to the African American community. You don't hear that from the Congressional Black Caucus. You don't hear that from the NAACP. You don't hear that from the National Action Committee with Al Sharpton. You don't hear it from the Rainbow Coalition with Jesse Jackson. This is a travesty. It's gross negligence, and it's something that needs to be addressed now. We've been betrayed.
Why do you say that it hasn't been addressed?
Well, I can tell you right now, you didn't hear those facts probably for the first time. And you would have to ask yourself, why is that? When the Congressional Black Caucus gets the same reports I get, demographically, they look at the birth rate. African Americans, as of 2006, are not even replacing the existing population. They're at 1.97. You need 2.1. Each woman has to have 2.1 children in order to replace the given society. Now, what's the alarming thing about that? That includes our brothers and sisters from Trinidad, Haiti, Jamaica, and our island brothers and sisters that come here to make their home, become citizens, they're in that number. What they won't do is do a survey on indigenous African Americans on their birth rate, and I guarantee you, you'll find it almost nil. So we're in a state of emergency, and the health ramifications are horrific, and no one knows. But basically, most people do not know them because Planned Parenthood is not going to tell them. The abortion clinic's not going to tell them. And this is why we are constantly demonstrating at the NAACP that they could have a forum inside their convention with black doctors, not loudmouth Reverend Childress, with black doctors discussing the implications and the ramifications of abortion.
Well, you talk about the health. There's also a psychological component.
Absolutely. Absolutely. 85, in a study done in Dayton of 120 African American women, 85% of them a year later reported some type of either psychological or physiological malady. The worst two that bothered me the most was that 55% of those women were still crying. 60% could not forgive themselves. Here I am, a gospel preacher, and my message is about redemption. If 52% of all African American pregnancies end in abortion, that woman's in my pew. Now, you can talk about you being from Kojic and the Holiness Church and all that stuff if you want. That woman is in your pew. Someone is in there who may be going through depression, who may be going through, I can't forgive myself. The preacher is not addressing that hurting woman in the pew. This is, as I've stated often, a tragedy, and the shepherd who's supposed to shield, cover, and protect has more or less been leading the sheep to the slaughter by their silence.
So when you don't speak to the issue, obviously silence in some ways is absolutely golden. In your pulpit, how much do you stress this social agenda issue? Is it often?
All I have is my people
Yeah.
and a few others sparsely across the country that will join with me in these demonstrations, and they've been well taught. They can articulate the message, but still, that's not enough, needless to say. And I deeply appreciate my church because they've stood with me, and they have received the facts, and they know what abortion does. They know that a woman who has an abortion for the first time, if that's your first pregnancy, you abort, you just increased your chances for breast cancer by over 500%. In a study done in Turkey just recently, they said you increase your chances for breast cancer 66%. So if this young girl goes into Planned Parenthood and asks for an abortion because she's just been impregnated by her boyfriend or some man, and this is her first time, they don't tell her, dear, you will increase your chances for breast cancer later, 66%. And they get to the point where, especially in the African American community, we're using abortion as a contraceptive, which weakens the uterine lining. And so when the woman decides she wants to have children, she can't because she cannot carry full term. And we now lead the nation. This used to never be an issue amongst African American women. We now lead the nation in miscarriages and preterm deaths of our children.